How and why did the Turks become Muslim, and why didn't the Mongols? Good question, interesting question. Comparative history. The Turks and the Mongols. First of all, what are their origins? So the Turks, their origin is the Hunnic peoples. I mean, for example, if you look at our history, Indian history, uh, the Huns attempted multiple invasions of India, wave after wave of invasion of India during the second half of the time period of the Gupta Empire. And they were called the White Huns, the Shweta Hunas. And the Huns were attempting this invasion of India at the same time when they were invading Rome. So that's how widespread the Huns were. And what was the origin of the Huns? The origin of the Huns was in the land that we now call Mongolia. So the Mongol people and the Hunnic people are essentially, they have the same ancestry, the same origin. What's the word for human being in the Mongol language today? Hunnu, okay, or who? So, so there is that. So the Mongols and the Huns had the same ancestry, but the Mongols, they remained in Mongolia. The Huns went wandering around the world. They became nomads, and eventually the Huns, they conquered some parts of India. Some of their kings were utterly nasty, like what's his name, Toramana, or was it Mihirkul? Mihirkul, no, Toraman was okay. He built the Bamiyan Buddhas. Good guy, good. We approves. But Mihirkul was an absolute barbarian. No one liked him. The Buddhists hated him. The Hindus hated him. Everyone hated him. He was an absolute atheist and a complete barbarian. So Mihirkul was nasty. But the other Hunnic kings were they became Indian, of course. For example, the patron of Brahmagupta was a Hunnic king. Okay, his name was Vyagramukh. So the patron of the great Indian astronomer Brahmagupta. Now, anyway, coming back to the Turks, the Huns eventually became the Turks. So how did they become Muslim? Is the question. Hmm? So over time, because of their presence in Central Asia, the Turks, let's call them Turks now, they came in contact with the Abbasid Caliphate, and the Turks were nomads and they were very tough, hardy people because they live in such extreme conditions. So they are naturally going to be good warriors. And they had this practice of raiding and all that. So they were good warriors. So some of the Turks became mercenaries. They became employed by the Abbasid Caliphate. They became soldiers in the Abbasid armies and so on. And that's how they discovered Islam. And some of them, because they were employed there and maybe they had children there, they may have married some local ladies or whatever, they eventually became Islamized. And somehow that's kind of the process by which Islam spread among the Turks. The Turks were never conquered by the Arabs. The Turks seem to have adopted Islam voluntarily. That's as far as I can see. Maybe I'm wrong. I've not studied the history in great detail, but there was contact between the Turks and the Abbasid empire, or caliphate. The Abbasid Caliphate was from 750 AD to about 1258. 1258 is when the Mongols put a full stop to the Abbasid Caliphate. Shri Hulegu Khan. But that's a different story. So he was Shri Chinggis Khan's descendant, but that's a different story. So 750 AD to 1258 AD is the Abbasid Caliphate. And that's the time when you had a significant interaction between the Turks and the Abbasids. And that's how the Turks somehow became Islamic. So the Turks became a Muslim. Now, why didn't the Mongols become Muslim? Because they're the same people, same ancestry, same heritage, kind of, right? Well, first of all, the Abbasids never reached Mongolia. They never did. Mongolia was way far away, way to the east. So there was no Islamic presence anywhere near Mongolia. I mean, around 1000 AD, for example. No, nothing at all. Nothing at all. And the Turks, they practiced originally the same religion, the polytheistic religion, as the Mongols, which is in English called Thingrism, which is a polytheistic religion which with multiple deities. The two principal deities are Tengri, the Sky Father, and Umai, the Earth Mother. But here we have other deities also in what you call Thingrism. It's not monotheistic by any means. Some people try to mischaracterize Thingrism as monotheistic, which is a lie. So the Turks were polytheists. The Mongols were also polytheists. Same religion. The Turks became Muslims. The Mongols somehow were more resistant than the Turks. Eventually, you had So eventually, what happened is that the Mongol Empire became so vast, so gigantic after a generation or two after Genghis Khan, that the Western Mongol Empire, the Golden Horde, the Ilkhanate, etc., they became Turkicized and they became Islamized slowly, gradually, by intermarrying and, and by ruling over so many Muslims. It made sense for them to become Muslim. So that's how the Western expanses of the Mongol Empire became Muslim and they became Turkic. Then you can no longer call them Mongols; they became Turks. But in the Mongol Empire itself, um, Islam never made any inroads. Why is that? There seems to have been some significant resistance to Islam in Mongolia among the Mongols. For example, we know that Shri Chinggis Khan has the well, he conquered half the world, and he launched his conquests because of a sense of justice, that I was wronged and I need to. Uh, no one's going to give me justice. I need to go and get justice myself. So he had sent an embassy to the Shah of Khwarazm. Genghis Khan wanted Mongolia to trade with Khwarazm, but the Shah of Khwarazm had the embassy killed. He had them beheaded, and then Genghis Khan sends a second embassy asking for justice. And the Muslim guy who was part of the embassy, because you're dealing with Muslims, he was beheaded, and the others were their heads were shaved and sent back. So then Genghis Khan said, "Okay, I'm going to go to war with you. I'm going to smash you out of existence," and that's what he did. So Genghis Khan has the record. The Islamic world hates Genghis Khan because Genghis Khan killed more Muslims than anybody has ever done in history. Okay, um, so maybe Genghis Khan got developed some aversion, perhaps, to Islam during his conquests of the Islamic world. Okay, and maybe he did not like something about it. I don't know what it is, but so Genghis Khan had this policy of what you call religious tolerance. He had a gigantic empire with subjects who practiced all kinds of religions. You obviously had Tengrism, which is the Mongol religion. You had Buddhism. You had Tibet, which is part of the Mongol Empire. You had northern India, which would have some parts of northern India where would have had Hindus also, and you had a gigantic Muslim population in the Western Mongol Empire. So Genghis Khan had given everybody the freedom to practice their religion. You do whatever you want. I'm not going to interfere. There's only one thing he had banned. Only one thing he had banned. And Shri Kublai Khan also continued this. He had banned halal slaughter. So there was something. I don't know what it was. So Genghis Khan started this practice that I will not allow halal slaughter. And Kublai Khan also continued that. So by the time of Kublai Khan, Buddhism had become the de facto state religion, not officially, but unofficially, it was the state religion. Um, but this practice started with Genghis Khan, not with Kublai Khan. So even during Kublai Khan's time, he was the emperor of China, by the way, Kublai Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson. So even during Kublai Khan's time, everything was allowed. You could practice anything you want, any religion, but the practice of halal slaughter was not allowed. So I don't know the reason, the cause for that, but the Mongols did not allow that. And yeah, so they had a much more vigorous resistance to Islam compared to the Turks, who readily adopted it. You won't find Islam in Mongolia today, except for some people who are not Mongols who may practice it, a small minority of people like the Kazakhs or whatever. But you won't find Mongols practicing Islam. Mongols will practice a syncretic religion, which is a mixture, a combination of Tengrism and Buddhism. That's what Mongols practice today.